In 1848, the European continent found itself swept up in a series of revolutions against the old ways. This spring of nations, as the revolutions can collectively be called, rallied against monarchy, political repression and oppression, and of course, economic troubles. Common folk around Europe cried out for relief from the hardships that they faced. Urban unemployment left majorities of populations dissatisfied with the status quo, and they cried out for change. They were able to see the advancements of other groups of the population who grew wealthy in their ownership of factories, land, and by producing goods at a rate never before seen. Yet their own lives remained stagnant, or in some cases, their standards of living greatly decayed. In France and Germany, leagues banded together to remedy what they believed was a societal injustice. Calls for reforms and bans on private property were common rallying cries for discontented people. Intellectuals, workers, and activists rapidly gained these groups. Among those who helped establish those leagues were two men, Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx. In February of 1848, Engels and Marx published their magnum opus, the Communist Manifesto. While the book was too fresh to take hold in these new revolutions, it did become part of the intellectual diet of revolutionaries who never saw the satisfactory resolutions that they desperately craved. Over time, these new ideas took hold within the socialist factions who revolted in 1848 and gave rise to the more extreme version of the ideology, communism. Humanity is broken down into two diametrically opposed groups whose goals are incongruent with each other. These groups are the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie control the levers of power. They are at the head of the political and economic hierarchy, able to make changes to life that benefit themselves. To maintain their grip on power, they control the cultural institutions that sedate the anger of those not in power in order to keep their minds fractured and unable to unite in a revolution. Among these levers of power held by the bourgeoisie is the capitalist economic system. At one point, capitalism was a necessary means to overthrow the outdated system of feudalism. Capitalists, the group of society willing to create and produce products for the wide variety of society, allowed economic expansion for all. Mankind had finally mastered nature and bent it to man's will. However, the system had outlived its usefulness by the middle of the 19th century, and communism claimed it as an opposing force rather than a liberating one. The proletariat mass is the second class in society whose basic goal is to share in an equal part of society's material creations. These material creations can depend on the type of society in which they are found. In a developed nation, the proletariat can demand electricity, books, and entertainment, along with the needs in a developing society such as clothing, shelter, and basic sustenance. These two groups share an intense relationship that is bound to break. The bourgeoisie is the master in this relationship, who gives just enough to the slave, the proletariat masses, to live, although the days of this relationship are numbered. The capitalist system, the greatest enabler of this master-slave relationship, has its downfall built into it, and according to Karl Marx, it allowed the proletariat masses the means of their own liberation through 7 steps to an ideal world. The first step begins during an economic crisis. Economies have fluctuated in the past, ranging from thriving booms to intolerable troughs. However, this economic crisis will become far worse than any other before it. The bourgeoisie will be able to stomach the hardship, but the proletariat will face dire circumstances. Their basic needs, regardless of what those needs might be, will be under constant threat. Unlike other fluctuations and economic depressions that came before, this one will not self-correct. Next, the workers and masses suffer in this economy. Even those with the most moderate or minimal standard of living are unable to make ends meet. The downturn has led their misery to become inescapable, leading the economy to take the third step. An awareness rises among the proletariat. They see a contradiction in the economy between themselves and the bourgeoisie. While the proletariat station grows worse, the bourgeoisie live comfortably. A psychological divide begins to take hold in those who are unable to escape their suffering. An us and them mentality grips them, and they come to believe that the economy and structures of power are only in place to maintain the status quo, and the only option is a revolution. Workers assemble together to boycott and protest this economy, seeking to find a remedy for their suffering. The different boycotts across the nation begin fractured, yet they are unified over time. When the protests don't work, a violent revolution is then necessary to overthrow the government. Should these options not work, the Communist Manifesto does support a democratically elected method or a civil war to reach its end goal. With a successful revolution comes an establishment of a dictatorship. Rather than the common understanding of a dictatorship ruled by a single supreme authority, this dictatorship is that of a united proletariat who establish change with their newfound power. They act swiftly to preserve the revolution, altering the public consciousness with education reform, cultural changes through forms of media, and they unify their message. As time goes on, these changes are cemented in society, changing the hearts and minds of the population and taking form under a new dictatorship until those who believed in the old ways have died off or changed their views. New believers are brought up into the system to become loyalists of the regime. The capitalist system has given way to a system where each produces according to his ability and receives according to his labor. The last stage then approaches, which is the state of communism. There is no more government as all have become loyal to the cause. The yoke of slavery was once put upon the proletariat and has now faded away. True freedom begins to take hold upon society. Humanity develops its true personalities away from the selfishness that dominated the old ways and has become retrained to become something new. All are Renaissance men and women, leading to a cultural boom that had yet to be thought of. All produce according to their ability and take according to their need. Thank you very much for watching our mini-series on socialism and communism. Stay tuned as we have new series coming up on the American presidents and on my own grandfather who fought in World War I. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.